1st of July and our Lunch and Learn this month. So I know it's an exciting time. It's the week before the holiday. I know everybody's preparing for a long holiday. I know many people are seeing pretty good activity levels coming forward, and I think it's very appropriate that Terri has brought to the table something I think is often misunderstood and not dealt with, but it's overcoming objections, and I think we all get them and we all learn our way of doing things in our marketplace, and I think this is a really good piece of information because business is picking up, things are moving along, and when that happens, you're going to have people with differences of opinions, and we're going to have issues over pricing and having other objections, and I think Terri will help us deal with some of those things. So without any further ado, Terri, welcome to the call and the Lunch and Learn this month, and I look forward to sharing with the people some great information.
Well, thanks, Mike, and happy July. We're mid-year, if you can believe it or not. And here's the time that most realtors have got to figure out if they're on the right track. And usually they have some inventory that has not sold. The reason it hasn't sold is either marketing or pricing. It's a beauty contest and a price war. And if you don't know how to negotiate, if you don't know what scripts and dialogues that you need to move the program forward, then you need to know, you really need the session is what I was going to say. So Mike, you know what, I have taken the intellectual and experience of one of my favorite people, whose name is Bernice Ross. Bernice is the author of Real Estate Go, and some of her work is right here. But today, what I want to do today is I want to share with you the proven strategies to help sellers, notice I said to guide sellers, to price their properties to sell. I didn't say right. I didn't say your way. I said price the properties to sell. And that has nothing to do with you, by the way. And the next thing that we have to figure out is how do we overcome 9 of the most common seller objections. Now, what is that? What is the first one? Well, always it's realtors say it's always price. They want to list it too high. So we're going to start off, Mike, with closing the seller on the right price. And so often in the past, the realtor was the authority. We had access to all this information, but today, so does the consumer. What we do is that we are the guides. We are the resource, the expert, because we've actually either seen the properties or know where they are, more familiar than they are. So the first strategy is, besides the competitive market analysis, is adding the price per foot market analysis. And what that means is, on a square footage CMA, you follow the 10% rule to choose your comparable properties. Now, we all know that seller that went ahead and added 13 rooms to a little bungalow and pool and a gold leaf ceiling, and now they want their money, and unfortunately, all the other houses around them are 500 to 1,000 square feet smaller. Well, that doesn't make it's going to impact, of course, the value of the house, but you still have to take into consideration the square footage. Now, this works in some markets, Mike, and others it does not. This is a kind of a snapshot of some of the software that's out there that shows you the square footage in different properties and different areas, which helps the seller start hunkering down on the logistics of the right price. And Mike, you and I both know that sometimes the seller will go to a portal like Zillow, and then what happens is Zillow says, my house is worth more. What do you say to that, Mike?
Yeah, it's amazing that you see with the influx of those services, whether that it be that one or the others that are out there, that people look at things and say, well, my house is the same or it's comparable. And the reality of it is Zillow calls it a Zestimate for a reason. It's because they're not really sure, and unless they see the property and unless they compare it to the other properties, based upon an inspection, all it can be, is an estimate. And let's be honest, we've gone back and forth and seen those to be off, 10, 20, 30% versus reality, and that, let's be honest, in places where people are arguing over $2,000 or $3,000, being off 10 or 20 or 30% is a real shocking situation. So I know what Zillow says, but let's be honest, unless Zillow is showing up with the cash to buy the house based upon their own estimate, then it really needs to be brought back to a realtor who has actual physical knowledge of the marketplace and the condition of the properties that have actually sold and what the market is, as opposed to an algorithm making, their best estimate.
Exactly. So in the small development I live in, which is 144 properties, there's only 10 high-end properties. The rest are small duplexes, townhomes. It's a mixed development, so that estimate isn't worth as much as you think. So here's a Chase Home Evaluator tool, and sometimes that'll help you as well because it gives an estimated value based around, but there are others, and you know about them. So this is one of our arguments, if you've listened to some of our previous programs, on why you need to have real-time access to MLS and some statistics. This is why I think you're looking towards a paperless, real-time presentation, not saying you don't have paper, but saying that you have the tools there to help the seller arrive at the value of the property, and that's number one. Number two is you've got it, and you know this, Michael, better than anybody, your house has to qualify. And if it doesn't qualify, no matter how much the buyer's willing to pay for it, if he has to get a loan, it ain't going to work. So I'm going to give you a script. And here it is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in order for your house to close, you must have a qualified buyer. And did you know, however, that your house has to qualify as well? Approximately 95% of all buyers have to obtain a loan, so your house must qualify with a lender. Now, before deciding where to position your property in the marketplace, let's see what other properties in the area have qualified for with their lenders. Now, Mike, clearly we're handing the ball off to the lender, correct?
Sure, and that becomes the argument or the discussion, because you'll often hear people say, well, a property is worth whatever somebody is willing to pay for it. And that is almost true. A property is worth what anybody is willing to pay for it in cash. Now, that's the stipulation, because a property is worth what anybody wants to pay for it in cash, and that's fine because it's their money. But the house also has a value when it comes to financing. What's the financeable value of that property? And you have to be clear, because certain types of property, certain conditions of property, certain types of loans are going to view properties differently. And so while some people don't think it makes much of a difference whether it's a condominium or a townhouse or a co-op, it makes a huge amount of difference based upon the lender. Whether you think you live in a single-family home, part of a bunch of other single-family homes, or you're in a de minimis PUD with mixed types of properties, can have a huge difference in what the financeable value of that property is. And that's why, even to this day, we're still using appraisers physically going out and inspecting property and doing the comparisons with other closed sales to make that determination of what becomes financeable values.
There you go. Well, here's the thing, because we've got some great scripts for people to use. Now, here, when I talk about a script, I don't want you to roll your eyes and say they don't work. They don't work because you're crumbing at using them. What you need to do is take the essence of the script and make it your own. So here's another one. It depends on supply and demand. So you now have an important decision to make, Mr. Seller. Are you going to position your property so you're in the top 9% of properties that will sell this month, or will you position your property where it will be in the 91% that will still be on the market next month, 2 months from now, 3 months from now? Of course, it's your choice. What would you like to do? Again, if you don't have the motivation of your seller down, Mike, then you got a problem. So there's that supply and demand. Mr. Seller, it's an important decision to make. Are you going to select a price to allow your property to sell in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or a year or more? Now, as a realtor, I can tell you that when a property is on the market, the most probable time for it to sell is when it's fresh. And that's in the first 10 working days, which means it's about the first 3 weeks. Because if there's been a buyer out there, they're looking for that particular property. If your showings fall off, there's a reason for it. Generally, it could be price, and what else is out there. So this is eternal vigilance. You've got to get out there and look at different properties every day and keep that seller informed of what their new competitors are. If they're in a boxing ring, it'd be a new boxer to meet every day. So it's important for us to educate that seller. Mike, any comments before we go on to marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the old adage of, putting the property on high and then allowing it, to come down, or, well, other properties' values will go up, so it'll come up to my price. It's been my experience, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, that the longer the property stays on the market, the less likely you're getting anywhere near close to that asking price. And in fact, the longer it rolls out, the more likely you're not only going to fall through what the fair market value would have been had you started there, but going below it, it's almost a penalty, if you will, for being on the market too long, because then
Exactly.
if it's something as simple as the price, people will be looking at it saying, gee, the house has been on the market that amount of time, there's got to be something wrong with it, and then some people don't even go to see it any longer.
Exactly, and the realtors say it's been on a long time. You wind up chasing the market, and statistically, NAR says it'll sell almost 30% below the original price. So trying to get that extra buck up front might not work. So we've got a lot to cover, and one of the things that's real important is notice I put position the value of your professional services. I did not say defend your commission. I want you to know that you need to understand how to sell value and not cut price. And it begins with a premium marketing plan. And Mike, you and I are both coaches, and I am disappointed many of the times, because I'm actually interviewing and training with realtors every day. As a matter of fact, this morning I was on with a broker trying to give them a $2.5 million referral. I would have loved a $2.5 million referral, just to let you know. But here's the key point. You've got to have a marketing plan that is different from or better than your competitors. So here's the key point. 67% of the sellers interview only one agent. That's a pretty good statistic. 13% only interview two. So 80% of the time you have a better than one chance to be that agent, but you've got to wow them. They have heard it all. And they also think they can sell it themselves, which, bless you. So here's the key. How do you differentiate yourself from the competition? And it's not about dazzling them with some dumb stuff that they don't understand, but it's to show them that there's actually a strategy, an ongoing strategy with metrics and accountability that you do that your competitor does not. If you think you do one competitive market analysis, you're delusional. Unless your market is very, very slow, you need to let that seller know what's on, what's under contract, and what is finally closed that will impact the value of their property. And there's a number of scripts that I want you to be aware of when they say, and they're going to because they've been trained that, we can negotiate everything. If you don't know what to say, you're going to stammer and you're going to cave. Now, you would never give away your entire paycheck because you wanted a listing, because then you wouldn't make any money. So at the end of the day, you need to know what it costs for you to do business every day. So here's a limited versus premium service script. We really like your services, Mike, but you're going to have to reduce your commission if you want our listing. Interesting. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I only work with sellers who want to obtain the highest possible price in the shortest amount of time by using our premium services. If you would like to reduce your commission, I'd be happy to give you a referral to a limited service agent who does not offer this level of services. Now, in the old days, we called that a takeaway clause. I'm going to suggest also that you think about this. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I have a 197-point initial 30-day premium marketing plan. Should you decide not to use those, you'll have to tell me which ones you don't use, because these are all fee-based services that I use to market your property not only globally, but locally as well. Now, you put the potato back in their pocket, right? So here's the thing. If you would prefer to pay a lower commission, I guess I could search for a junior associate who would be willing to work for less money. Mike, what do you say about that?
Yeah, I think that that always becomes the point when it comes to the whole commission thing and what people think they can do and what can be negotiated. I like the idea of giving them the sheet of all the different things that are involved and asking them, okay, and what would you have me not do? What would you like me to remove from the list of things that we do. Or again, if you are prepared, and you have to be, because you're gonna lose a few if you go out there this way. If you're defending yourself and saying, well, I would be happy to refer you for somebody who will work for less, because it always comes down to the big question. You know, you reduce your fees to a certain point, and at what point does it become not worth it? If you cut your fees in half to get more business, then you have to do twice as much business to make the same amount of money. And we all know it doesn't work that way, number one. And number two, why would you want to do that? So the reality of it is, on the mortgage side of things as well as on the real estate side of things, you know, we all know the price is the price. And we know that there's always someone out there who will work for less or work for free. Some will even work and it will cost them money. And the only thing that we can do at that point is understand where our market is and what we're willing to work for and what we're not willing to work for. And if that customer if we have to let them go, then sometimes you have to let them go, because you cannot get into a position where you undercut your own personal value, and you have to know where that stands. And for all of us, you know, commissions or fees or prices are something that we have to look at our market and understand where we provide value. Yes, my fee may be higher than the other person's, but we think that our fees are just and meet a very high standard of value for the money. Because, and let's be honest, my favorite line ever was, I could give you to somebody who would be willing to give up their commission to take your deal. But one of the key ingredients when it comes to negotiating a sale of your property is the ability to know the value of what it is you're doing. And if you have somebody negotiating for you whose first move is to give away their own money, then how likely is it they're going to be giving away yours?
Exactly. And that's exactly true, Michael. And here's the thing. If you do a good enough job, an outstanding job of providing this incredible premium marketing plan that they've never heard before, commission may not even come up. But let's just say it's, you know, there's a reason for it. You just have, like Mike said, if you cut into your profit zone, then you're working for free anyway. So let's talk about being a powerful negotiator. Will you reduce your commission? John Smith from your office offered to list our property at 1 point less than you're charging. To obtain the highest possible price for your property, you need someone who's a powerful negotiator. Isn't that correct, Mr. Seller? And then wait for their response. Real hard for salespeople to not talk. So if you hire an agent who can't even negotiate a full commission on his own behalf or hers, how effective do you think that person will be in negotiating the maximum price for your property? Mike just brought that up. You've got to be able to have somebody who can commission, you know, deal at least with an objection, because objections say that they're interested. So here's the equity giveaway script. Will you reduce your commission? Jane Jones from your office offered to list our property at 5%, 4%, 3%, whatever. So Jane was willing to lower her commission by 17%. Is that correct? Would she be willing to give away 17% of your equity as easily as she gave away 17% of her commission? Again, working on your behalf. If I'm the seller, one of the best lines I had is, I don't want to leave any of your money on the table. I'm willing to implement what I have learned, what I've invested in, these multiple platforms, these 1,400 different ways to reach buyers through algorithms, software platforms, all of that. So I'm pretty committed to getting this sold and saving you money. Which do you prefer? So here's another one. Show them expired. We're thinking about listing our property with an online realty company that only charges 1.5%. As you can see from this printout, most of the expired listings were listed with firms that discount. How much did these sellers actually save when the broker did not sell the property? Wait for their response. You only pay the broker when you sell, right? So, Mr. Seller, there's no savings when there's no sale. When your house does not sell, the amount of the commission is irrelevant. That's true. One of the other things that I've noticed, Mike, is that very often the agent does not go through the equity statement. And that is a worksheet where we take away from a proposed selling price all of the charges that ensue when you sell a property, title and inspection and points and whatever. And so when you do that, the commission isn't such a big deal because then they see what it's going to cost them. And by the way, even if they sell by owner, the first thing a buyer that has any brain at all is going to say is, well, we're just going to knock off 5 or 6 or 7% because you're not paying a broker. And if you use local comps that sold the same amount of money, they had to pay them anyway. So let's just knock that money off anyway. Why not get paid, right, Mike?
Yeah, Terry, I think it's the same argument that gets held for the for sale by owner properties. You know, the for sale by owner properties that are out there on the market, and the first thing somebody who comes in wants to buy the house does is offer, you know, much lower than what the original asking price is, and the first argument they'll use is, well, you're not paying a real estate commission. You know, two people can't save the same dollar. It's just not possible.
Exactly. Good point, too, by the way. So here's some more issues, and some of them may or may not come up, but this would be great reference for you when you go back into Improve My Tomorrow coaching and look at it, maybe print it out. But one of them is if we have to pay a buyer's agent a full commission to get traffic, then you can take 2%. We'll give them 3%. Really? Please understand how benefits you have to pay more money to get the agent who has a fiduciary duty to get you to lower your price rather than the agent whose job it is to help you achieve the highest price. Sellers do not understand fiduciary relationship, which means if you have signed an agreement to represent a seller, your job is to do the best job for them. And they need to understand the buyer works for who? The buyer. The buyer's agent works for the buyer. So they don't have any interest in helping the seller. They want to get less, you know, the most they can for the less money from the homeowner. So you really need to understand that you may have to articulate that difference so that the buyer and the seller understands the position of a buyer agent. So, Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the one thing that you have to look at when it comes to that whole deal is your specific market as well. In many parts of the country right now, what we're seeing is the fact that there are many more qualified buyers than there are properties, and there is some general consensus that in many parts of the country there is a lack of listed properties for sale, and we're facing many multiple offer situations. If anything, the listing side of the deal is the person who has done the work, and the buyer side of the deal right now in many parts of the area are pretty plentiful. You know, we do that. We ebb and flow from a buyer's market to a seller's market and then back again through neutral. And I will, say that in most of the country where I have my clients, there are more challenges with finding homes for sale than there are people who are willing to buy them. And we're facing a lot of multiple offer situations. We're facing a lot of people who are missing out because they don't understand coming in. They're dealing with, different thoughts, and there are still people today going out there and offering well under asking price for properties, and they're wondering why they're making offers on 10 or 20 or 30 different homes. So yeah, I think the listing side of things is tremendously important. I think agents who have the ability to go out there and get in front of people and make the process understandable to the seller as well as the buyer are the ones that are going to get more than their fair share of the opportunities. And as far as the price goes, I've always been one who always frowned upon discounting commissions or negotiating down prices, because in a business where that price negotiation is one of the main factors that you bring a realtor in, is to negotiate the terms and conditions of your deal. And like you've said before, if somebody's willing to give away their own money that they feed their family with, what kind of a job do you think they're going to do to protect your money? And so for me, there are a lot of strategies out there when it comes to those things. Ultimately, the consumer gets to make their choice of who they're going to use. You've got to be the professional. You've got to be the expert and the authority, and you've got to share the reasons for your plan and make sure that you're comfortable with the service and the value that you're providing to the people, and live and die by the fact that you're going to do it the right way and at a reasonable price, because I will tell you, people are often not happy down the road with something that they bought at a bargain price. And so, there's a reason that there is Walmart, but there's also a reason that there is Nordstrom's. And 3 to 6 months after the transaction is closed, and maybe even sooner, there are a lot of people who are much happier that they've enjoyed the experience at Nordstrom's than ever having stood online and waited for whatever it was that they were buying at Walmart.
Great point, Mike, and there's even a commercial out there that says nobody stamps their foot because they want less. And so you know that the consumer wants more, but it's incumbent upon you as the agent to set up the relationship up front. If you want a Mercedes, you can't, if you can only afford a Kia, no disrespect, and you want a Mercedes or a Lamborghini, no matter what you do, there's going to be a difference in what you choose. It might be financial. It might be even like upkeep. I mean, there's lots of different factors, but at the end of the day, you can't have what you can't afford. Or if you've got a seller that says, well, I have to get X amount of dollars out, well, that's his problem. That's like saying, well, I bought that Coca-Cola stock, and I bought it for $50 a share, and now it's $1 a share, but I got to get my $49 back. Well, that's not how it works. The market changes, maybe not as fast as the stock market, but it changes all the time. And, if we invested in our service as hard as we invest in other things, our attention, our competencies, our ability to be the leader, and this is salesmanship is a leadership. And so what we're talking about here is not some snappy comeback, but to help you understand that you have to sell value. Is every client right for you? No. I've turned down listings where the seller said, well, I've got to get, 50, 100,000 over the market. And I say, you know what, I wish you luck with that. I'll be the second broker in. If it doesn't sell, I'd be honored to work with you, because I'm not going to blow, my reputation as being, really one of the most professional realtors on the planet. That was my goal and always was. I wanted to know that people knew that if they showed my listing, Mike, that it was going to be within that variance of anywhere between 3 to 6% of listing price. And I was right on with it, and I was constantly right on with it, because setting the price for a property can be ever-changing variable. All you need is
Terri,
one big sale.
Terri, one of the things that we talk about all the time, and I'd like to bring up here is, especially for the realtors who are on the call listening, is another reason to bring your mortgage professionals into the transaction as soon as you can, is because those people may have no idea what they really need for their next purchase. They may have their sights set on buying a particular house, and they may have gone online and used the mortgage calculator and figured all these different things out and predetermined in their mind what it is that they needed to get out of one house into the other so that they could move into the new home. And sometimes they get it wrong. And bringing in your mortgage professional who can analyze the situation and know, what is the big picture here? Well, the goal is to sell this house and buy another one and get into that house comfortably with a payment that we can manage. And sometimes it's not just a matter of selling this house and using all the money to get out of this house and into the next one. Sometimes you can look at the transaction, and by simply structuring the transaction properly, that person can get everything that they wanted by reducing the price. One of the things that I bring up, I had one happen a few months ago where a loan officer had somebody involved in a deal with the seller, and the seller and the buyer were $5,000 apart on agreeing to terms. And when the seller told that to my loan officer who was handling their loan on their next purchase, he said, I don't understand why you would be that far apart. The reality of it is, to you, it's $23 a month. Are you really willing to be prepared to give up moving on and getting into your next home over $23 a month, because that would be what it would cost you to finance that $5,000 into the new home? And by the way, what happens, well, if you're waiting for that next buyer to come along who will indeed give you the full price for your house and recover that $5,000, who's to say interest rates haven't moved up an eighth or a quarter or worse, making that next house $50, $100, $200 a month more expensive to own? And that's what I'm saying here is realtors, if you're going to be the professional and you're going to know the details of the transaction and the details of the market, here's a great reason to bring your financial professional in, your mortgage professional, to speak to that listing just as soon as you can, because they'll know the specific financial details of that transaction and may be able to help put together a strategy that eliminates the challenge of the money, because the ultimate goal is not always about the money. The ultimate goal is to sell one house and buy the other.
Absolutely, Mike, and you know how you and I have been speaking to the value of working as a team, because people don't buy houses every day. They don't understand the mortgages, and so they may think they need X amount, but in fact, with a lower interest rate, you can buy more. So, you know, what are your toughest objections? If you on the call, and you feel free to email us at Terri at Improve My Tomorrow Coaching or Mike at ImproveMyTomorrowCoaching.com, and tell us what you'd like to hear, because we have only, you know, our 36 minutes here to help you. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to give you what you need to be the best you can be. So, oh, I've got a problem here. So here we go. Our next session is on August the 5th, Mike, and we are excited about having a whole new group of ideas for you for the rest of the year, so that you can use what we're going to do in advance, because we're going to have some downloadable pieces for you as well, so that you can literally have some checklists, some white papers, and some scripts that you can literally print so that you can do a better job of listing and selling. And Mike, why don't you just tell them what else we can do for them?
Well, Terri, you know, this whole idea of the Lunch and Learn was put together to help mortgage professionals and realtors work better together. And we have spent over the last year now putting these on here and doing these Lunch and Learns so that that can happen. For those of you who are realtors, came on here who were given this opportunity by a mortgage professional, or for those mortgage professionals who are on this call at the invitation of another mortgage professional, these Lunch and Learns, again, you get these full year for $999. I mean, it is really a very inexpensive situation when you think about the value that we bring month after month. Now, our full price client are the people who are coaching with us, whether you're coaching as a mortgage professional in my coaching programs, or if you're a real estate professional and you're coaching with Terri in one of her coaching programs, these become absolutely free. And along with that, you have access to the client site here on the website, which provides you all the scripts, all the dialogues, all the ebooks that we have written, all the practical materials that we have had, all prior Lunch and Learns that we have recorded. So all that material is still there. The prior sessions are still there, because the content in many cases survives the day that we put it on. It is reoccurring. There are of value. The pieces that we have done a year ago still contain content and value and strategies that you can use right away. And so that's what we're doing here with the Lunch and Learn. So for those of you who are new to this, take a look at the website. Go to ImproveMyTomorrowCoaching.com. If you're a mortgage professional, take a look at what we have available for you as far as individual coaching. And if you're a realtor, take a look at the realtor coaching pieces, because Terri is one of the most significant real estate presences in the entire country. Terri sold more than 100 homes a year for 20 consecutive years. And to have somebody of that caliber and that stature available to help you coach for as little as $1,000 a year, and to be able to have her help coach and mentor you through any situation, along with all the information and things that she can provide, is a value that I don't think you can find anywhere. So those are the coaching programs that we have available for you. The coaching call is here, and many of you are on here as a courtesy from one of our subscribing members. If you have any questions about any of the services, you can look at us online, or we can forward you over the names of people who are in the coaching programs, and you can find out if that's an investment in yourself that will generate rewards from you for years to come. So thank you for taking your time out with us. Terri, thanks again for taking your time to help enlighten everybody on the call, and we look forward to working with you all again next month.
See you in August. Thanks, everybody.